Hey there, everyone, and welcome to LUYL, where our quest is to help you level up your life. Today, I'm really excited to have a guest speaker with us today. This is my cousin, Jon Taylor. We grew up together, all the things that guy cousins do, roughhousing at Grandma and Grandpa's house, all the family parties and get-togethers. We probably have a little more family directly related than most people do, but, we were growing up in parallel. We've ended up doing lots of things and keeping up over the years. And I thought that he had a good story for you guys, and I'm excited to hear his story and to share it with you today. Jon, if you could just give us an introduction, tell us a little bit about yourself, your origin story, and then where you're at now.
All right, awesome. Yeah, Jonathan Taylor. Grew up in Wichita, Kansas. I actually claimed Derby as my home. Spent 18 years there. Then through the Catholic school system, which was loads of fun. Jumped into the Catholic school, high school, and left there for Kansas State University. Actually spent 3 years there after my first year was loads of fun. That's a story for a whole nother time. But got in there, found my home, graduated out of Kansas State with a marketing degree. And kind of the entire time I was there at Kansas State, I was looking at the Air Force multiple times, tried to enlist, couldn't bring myself to stop doing college and give up that hope. I've also finishing college and then figuring out what in the world this calling was for the military. The entire time that calling really felt like it was more towards the Air Force than anything else. I'd always wanted to fly. And then my junior year, got in contact with a recruiter that was specifically for officers, and managed to get my package prepared, and then subsequently was told that it was denied due to cancellation of the boards, which was nice. A year and a half waiting on a rated board to actually convene. That's the downside to going through officer training school. You are the last tier of the selection rate for the Air Force. So you've got the Academy is number one, and then number two is all the ROTC programs. And then if there's anything left over for the rest of us bums out there that get on coming off the street, you go through the officer training school and get picked up for it. So when I finally got picked up in 2015, been through 3 recruiters and waited over a year to kind of get through that process. Got picked up to be a remotely piloted aircraft pilot, as we call ourselves now. Did that training in 2015. I've seen pretty much the entire U.S. going around doing that job. It's been 9 years now in the Air Force. I went to Missouri, South Carolina, and did an exchange tour with the Marine Corps out in Arizona, and had a lot of fun. Done some crazy things, done some things I never thought I'd really ever do, all while, again, staying stateside, helping out, support the guys on the other side of the world, keeping those guys safe. So that leads me all the way up to here and now with a wife and 2 kids, with one more on the way, and that's my professional life. And then my personal life there with the wife and kids has been just a work in progress. I'll put it that way. I'm trying to manage the career with everything else that goes along with that. As they love to say, if the military wanted you to have a wife, they'd issue you one.
Absolutely.
And it's never more true.
Career plus family life is always an adventure, and then you add the fact that you're doing it in the military full time, and it only gets more exciting. So absolutely.
Yeah.
So what I got from that is, you had a plan. You were going to join the Air Force. You ran into some obstacles along the way, but you stayed true to the course. And as I understand, you just got selected for major on this last annual board. So that's going to be coming up relatively soon. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was loads of fun as well. You get marked against all your other guys from your year group. And the first time doing that, because in the Air Force is different than the Army. You never actually go through a selection process as a captain. It's just whether or not you've got a DUI or, done something stupid on your record. Otherwise, you're a captain now. So when you hit the major board, and this year's been the most selective they've been over the last 5 years, they actually rack and stack you against all your peers. And I was the new guy on station down here in San Antonio, and that was kind of a kick in the junk for that one of realizing I'm definitely not uh, the best by a long shot, but got picked up for it nonetheless, and I'll put on here in this coming April. So that's a nice career milestone. And already trying to figure out what the heck the next assignment looks like, so I can get picked up for the, or at least
A-
get a good look at for the next promotion. So
Absolutely. Well, you're always planning for the next obstacle down the road and trying to make sure that you're as prepared as possible for it. So, can you expand on an obstacle that happened at some point in your life, whether childhood or even in your professional career, adult life, that had a major effect on your life?
yeah, I can speak to one specific event, and I know this is kind of down in the weeds of the operational world inside the military, and I don't know how many of these individuals are going to look at this and understand it. But when I was out at South Carolina, we were hot and heavy in operations overseas. I was in the middle of my instructor upgrade, so becoming an instructor pilot, and then also working to get my wife towards me. She was starting to out processing process with the Army while she was pregnant. So we were awaiting our firstborn. And then I had also started my master's program, all while still trying to maintain a normal ops schedule, flying every single day. And I had got into work that night, not expecting much. I did know we were short on guys, but I got in the seat, and it was a rather normal day in the seat. We were over top the JTAC and supporting guys on the ground. We couldn't really see them. We were, um,
So, JTAC is a Joint Tactical Air Controller. So, he's supporting guys doing operations on the ground that are thousands of miles away from him.
yeah, absolutely, and definitely the best part of the job. Whenever you got to get on station with those guys, also get your hair standing up because there are friendlies on the ground, and these were our own friendlies. These were not international allies or anybody like that. So, uh, trying to stay on my toes, but we had weather rolling. I couldn't really see the ground from our perspective. We were probably a good 8,000 feet above the weather, which is where I like to be, but it's not overly beneficial for the guys on the ground. And it was a solid 2 to 3 hours of quiet time. And then stuff started popping off on the radio, and JTAC started requesting assistance, and I did my best to provide as much coverage as I could. We put our eyes on the target, tried to give them a good video feed, but we had enough cloud coverage that it was maybe 5 seconds out of every 60 seconds that we were seeing the ground. So I requested a descent down up underneath the weather. As we started that descent, JTAC started taking in incoming fire and declared a TIC, which is troops in contact, which was basically kicks off a whole number of things for us, but really sets us up on our toes, kind of gets our fangs out, ready to start employing. We had 4 Hellfires that day, and that, to say the least, I wasn't prepared at that point in time to start employing those because I would just kind of been sitting on my hands. They've been very quiet on the radios. They didn't even want to talk to us. It was pretty much just calm out all the way up until they said um, they had visual of individuals and started taking the incoming fire. So we got down through the weather, and at that point, they did have effective fire on their position inside of a relatively built up area. Um, but all that to say, I was the only asset on station, and the comms that were coming through the radio at that point in time, the JTAC was a little pissed off with my positioning. He wished I had been down below that weather much faster. But the nature of the beast with what we do, it's not exactly a quick asset. And it took me probably 6 to 8 minutes to get down underneath the weather. And that's a relatively rapid descent for us. The camera that's on board the aircraft actually fogged up due to the temperature change. And it hadn't been something we dealt with, especially inside of this AOR. So had eyes on the target at that point in time, or at least what I believed to be the target, but we were still unable to truly provide the effects that the JTAC was looking for, while he was still screaming over the radio that he needed help, and us telling him, "Hey, we're doing our best here." At the end of the day, I won't go down to any more detail than that, but we provided uh, two hellfires for him that day, stopped the inbound fire, and I thought, a job well done. Nobody lost their lives other than the bad guys. But the after action report the next day, I left the seat, got swapped out, and even just leaving that day it hurt me just because I was slow. At least I felt slow with the radio calls that were coming in, and then the crews that were nearby Monday morning quarterback and telling me that they could have done better and X, Y, and Z. And then I came back in the next day, and the after action report was that I should have done a better job in regards to clarifying the target. The target that the JHAC had actually called out for the fires on was not the target that we provided the fires on. We uh, destroyed two buildings that day and took out 8 individuals. And hearing the after action report from the JTAC that wasn't the intended target definitely made me a little uncomfortable. Even though he did clarify that it was enemies that they were that we had targeted and taken out, and that the inbound fire had stopped, everybody was safe. Um, the comms in that scenario still kind of live rent free in my head, and I I don't think they're ever going to leave. And the fear in his voice um, definitely it hits home. Like, I'm glad he walked away from it, but I don't think he realized the effect he left an indelible mark on me for the rest of my life. That, for better or worse, is with me. And I still hold now that it's better because I'm better for it. It's focused me in those scenarios where I get a little complacent that I got to do better.
Absolutely. So as members of the military, we're definitely highly trained, and we try to stay as proficient as possible at doing our job. But when it comes down to actually doing the job on the day-to-day basis, you know, sometimes even if we get the job done and we do the best that we can, which is all you can do in a given situation, take the information that you have and make what seems like the best decision at the time. Sometimes that gives us a learning experience that we didn't do as well as we think that we might have in that situation. But a lot of growth definitely comes from those situations, if I'm correct, where you feel like you didn't do as well as you would have hoped. You got the job done, you did what you did to support the men on the ground there, but you definitely still to this day, how long ago was this?
It's about 5 years now.
Yep. So half a decade and you still have that playing in your head. But, at the end of the day, I would be willing to bet it's made you a better officer, a better unmanned aerial pilot, and you've gotten a lot of learning from that. So, what did you do, and what do you continue to do moving forward to pursue success, building upon that, not necessarily failure, but that day that things didn't go exactly how you wish they would
Well, you can dance around the idea that it wasn't a failure, but I feel every day that it was absolutely a failure on my part. I wasn't as proficient as I should have been. Now there's a number of alibis that are kind of highlighted there with the wife, the kid, the master's program, the instructor upgrade, you name it. And I
have.
didn't.
And long
I
story short, part that we didn't really get at was that you're active duty Air Force, your wife is active duty Army, you
yeah,
guys are married, pregnant. She's working her way out of the military, so there was definitely a lot going on at that time.
yeah, and I didn't. To that end, I didn't recognize the risk associated with trying to juggle 6 different balls when I should have only had one on my plate at that point to try and focus, especially inside of those scenarios where somebody else's life is dependent upon my actions. They depend on you being your best at that moment in time. And I felt like I gave him my best, but my best wasn't. I had maybe 60% of what I was able to give. I gave him 100% of that 60% right there. It may not sound like the most realistic thing in breaking those numbers down, but I felt like I gave him what I had. And the unfortunate scenario is that somebody else probably would have been in a better position right there. But to this day, I hold that I try to analyze risk in a better way. I break it down beforehand before I go into work anymore. I try to analyze where I'm sitting, recognize the outside influences that are affecting me, and then be a little more blunt and upfront with myself. Entering every single one of my sorties, and ask myself that, and then I try to be a little more upfront with the students that I deal with and the other operators of, hey, you said this was going on, and you say you're okay. Well, let's talk about it. Let's figure out what's actually going on. If we can mitigate any of that risk, let's do so. Because I'd rather you step feeling more comfortable, and then it's something that we teach in the military and across aviation as a whole. The crew resource model, good CRM as a crew is it's game changing. And to this day, actually, the other piece that I didn't tag into with that story, I just about lost my sensor operator, the other piece of my crew, after that sortie. He broke down pretty heavily, slid into depression, um, and he was probably hours from taking his life um, after that. And I think that's the other piece that affected me a great deal, and I still hold that one. And I tell all my students, because I'm in a schoolhouse now, of how ineffective we can be as officers if we don't choose to listen to the individuals that we work with every day and just sit and absorb the information that they provide to us and try to be effective listeners. Because I don't I don't know how life would look right now if I'd lost that guy, and he's not a big piece of my life right now. But I was able to stay long enough there in that position to see him go through it and come back out the other side and become qualified again, which is darn near unheard of inside of aviation, to deal with a potential suicide, deal with mental health, and then come back and actually still be qualified to fly. So I hold that as a win overall, and something else I try to incorporate in my daily life is analyzing what I'm going through, so that I don't end up in that position again of just stepping and not not dealing with my own personal issues before I get out there in a dynamic scenario.
Absolutely. And when you see it become that serious in another person, it really makes you take a step back and look at yourself, and not maybe that you're exactly in that situation, but that you might not have as good of a grasp on a regular day where nothing's going on of your mental acuity, your sharpness based on that situation, and seeing that person makes you really go into yourself and make sure that you're doing okay. Is that right?
Absolutely. I'm not sure how better to put that other than he brought out some emotions in me that I didn't think I had. I was able to shut down a lot of that stuff before, and seeing somebody else deal with that and put the weight that I didn't feel like needed to be there on that, it made me question my perspective and try to reattach, which was beneficial. It wasn't a detriment at all.
Absolutely. So another lesson that I gathered from all of this is, in a position of leadership, whether you're a pilot, whether you're in the military as an officer, a non-commissioned officer, a leader, in whatever situation you might be in, whether it's, commercial work, mentorship, leadership, or even, regular mentorship, you've got to look at it from all perspectives. And, from the top, from a leadership position, it might look a little bit different than the way that you see things from the perspective of a lower enlisted, or whoever this person that also depends on you. So you also have to, keep visibility on exactly what everyone else around you is seeing as well, and take input from those people, especially in these hard situations.
Absolutely. And I've held since I've got into this position that the crew model is what I love about what I do, as well as being able to help the guys on the ground. But man, I love my enlisted guys like they're brothers, and it can be hard for me at times of not embracing that outside of work. Of there's no rank to me. Like I treat an airman as an airman just because they're 18 years old. But once I know them, they're my brother. They're no different than me. Yeah, there may be some times when I need them to do something, but that's purely based on a rank structure within the military. I I love him like a brother, and I treat him like a valuable asset inside of my position because otherwise, what am I doing as an officer? What am I doing in a cockpit with another individual if I'm not using them as what they're capable of?
Absolutely. And, you're the people under you who you command, are a lot more likely to give their best if it's coming from a position of mutual respect that they know that they need to get this done for you and you have that kind of brotherly relationship with them. They're, if they're giving you your best as someone that they know and love in that way, they're going to give you better than if that dang commander asked me to do this again and blah blah blah. I hate him, but I have to do it. So definitely don't want to
Exactly.
be in those positions. But uh, so it's going to be pretty tough for our listener to be coming up on that same position. But if you could talk directly to yourself in that situation, what would you say to yourself if you could talk to yourself, the day before, the day after, and talk yourself through that situation from someone who's been able to process it for 5 years?
I would say if I could do it the day before. Obviously, you can't remove the external factors there. It's an impossibility. Like I would love to go back in time and say, "Hey, quit doing all this stuff. Focus on work. Spend some more time because you're about to go through something really hard, and you need to do a better job." But it would just be, "Hey, before you go into work today, sit down, take a look at what's going on, breathe, focus on it, do a better pre-brief walking out the door, and then on the opposite end of that spectrum, walking out that day, probably would have been better for me to have engaged with that individual, my sensor operator, and talked to them and spent a little more time at work, just because there were individuals there that probably could have assisted me. But I felt like there was so much weight on my shoulders of this is what I had done, and there was a lot of judgment going on from some other individuals that I valued, but at the same time, I knew their perspectives just because of their leadership style, and I knew there were other individuals that could have helped me out had I engaged them. Um, I did have a conversation with the commander the day after, and actually, oddly enough, I had brought my wife in with me that day, um, and that was probably one of the more difficult things I've done too was engaging with leadership and having that conversation. And I ended somebody's life the day prior, and I didn't just readily didn't discuss it with my wife because I didn't find value in it, and she didn't realize it or the things that I was dealing with. And um, the beauty in that is that
Somebody
later,
wants daddy.
yeah, later I did start bringing that stuff up more with the wife. So maybe that was can kind of go before and after of engage with the wife a little more, utilize the normal outlets that you have, and just really focus on your ability to use the environment around you to assist yourself because uh, I didn't do a decent job of that, and I didn't recognize that my wife had that capability to handle some of that stuff. And then she dealt with death, being a nurse, but I also feel like there's a little bit on us as military members and individuals as a whole, either just as men, to shoulder a lot of that weight because that's what's expected of us, right? That's what society tells us to do. We're strong individuals that can handle the emotions, lock it down. We don't need to talk to somebody. But um, if there's a person that you need to talk to, it's your wife, right? I feel like you,
Absolutely.
you
And
agree with that one.
yep, got to communicate with the wife. She's going to be a major part of life, so she needs to understand the struggle that you're going through and the reasons for the things happening in your life. So, with that being said, we all know that 22 veterans a day kill themselves. And if anybody's watching this and they feel like they're getting anywhere near that point, please reach out to your brothers. Please reach out to me, even if I don't know you. I mean, I would much rather spend an hour on the phone with you than your best friend, your wife, your parents, your kids, having to talk at your funeral. So, take that deep second, really look into yourself and figure out, what is causing you to think that way and reach out to somebody. everyone around you would be much more happy to have that conversation, that hard conversation. Hey, man, I'm thinking about this, and have that conversation with you than to find out that, you went through it with it and we have to deal with it on the backside. Anything else you want to say on that?
No, I apologize. We got us down that rabbit hole. I know it's a tough subject, but I'm right there with you, and I try to bring that up with all of our individuals of recognizing that this stuff sneaks up on you too. Most individuals
Absolutely.
never consider it, and it's usually the times where you're sitting alone and thinking about things that have happened. That it's the unfortunate scenario is you're going to end up alone at some point, and you're going to face those things, those demons that are in there. And it's the fact that you are alone that's the dangerous part.
Absolutely. So
So
reach
that,
out
that
to your
phone call,
brothers, reach out to
yeah,
your battle buddies, whatever they may be to you. Reach out to someone, because being alone is the most dangerous part of that. So, moving off of that subject, what is a characteristic that you think defines being a good man? So, if you look at all of the men in your life, what is something that they share, or what is something in particular that defines good, proper manhood for you?
I think one word has always stuck out to me, and it's kind of a core creed in the military as well as individuals that I've known. It's integrity. Um, Being a good man requires you to back things up. And if you're going to say you're going to do something, go do it. Even if it's something that sucks and you realize it afterwards of, hey, this really sucks. I got over my skis here, and I didn't know what I was getting into. Finish it. Like, get in there, finish the job, reflect on it. Maybe don't go do it again because that was a bad idea. But you said you're going to help out. Show up, and that's man. I can count on my one hand the number of guys that I can call up and have that integrity. I mean, they're going to show up no matter what. It doesn't matter what I ask them to do. They're going to show up, and I don't have enough fingers and toes to count the number of guys that won't. Like I count them as friends, acquaintances, but if I ask them to do something difficult and I need something from them, I'm not calling them because I. And whether or not that's true integrity or not, at least they're being honest half the time and they tell me no. But I'm going to get a yes from the other half, and they're just not going to show up. So
Absolutely. Yep.
it
And if you
hurts
can't
too.
follow through on the things that you do, just like you said, the first time you don't come through on especially some of those more difficult asks, you're just getting struck off the list of people that can be trusted. So, absolutely.
It
That's
starts
a
with the
great
small
point.
stuff, though. I mean, in all honesty, like whether it's a family relationship or just a new friend, they ask, "Hey, can you give me a ride?" Sure. When you need a ride, you show up early and you get them where they need to be, and then it builds from there. And then it becomes time where you need a favor and you ask that favor, and they're there, and
Absolutely.
you can count on them.
Dependability is definitely a huge thing. All right. Well, we're coming up on the end of our time. The last question I have for you is, what single piece of wisdom would you pass on to a mentee or the next generation? Just somebody who wants to end up in your position. What's one piece of wisdom you can pass on for them to make some extra success in their life?
And this has probably been said by a number of people that are a heck of a lot smarter than me and a heck of a lot more wise. But it's just don't take yourself too seriously. In all honesty, and there's so many people, especially when you're in the military and you're trying to fight yourself all the way up the ranks, that people get too wrapped around the wheel. They think that they're doing the right thing, and it just becomes me, 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 and they're so focused on being professional that there's never that breakdown of like, hey, I'm a person too. Like let's knock off the yes sir, this, that, and the other. Let's knock off the rank. Let's knock off the titles. Let's have a discussion and catch somebody outside of the professional environment where it's okay, like at the gym or something, and you have a discussion with them, and they say, "Hey, sir," I say, "No, knock that off. Come on now, like just talk to me." Like
Right.
here, we're just buddies that know each other, and at some point, you get to know me well enough. We're brothers in arms, and I would rather just have that conversation. So I don't take yourself too seriously across the board. Anything that you do, have a little bit of fun with it because life's too short with that stuff. I mean, all the greatest leaders that I know, while they know to have that time to be very professional, they can knock it off and have the best time with the guys that they lead because that's really how you get their respect. You show that you're an equal with them, like we kind of talked about earlier, and that they're not better than you.
Absolutely. And, just like you said, whether it's, CEO, employee, whether it's officer, enlisted person throughout the military, throughout whatever group of people that you could potentially be in, there's a time to straighten up your tie and to act with professionalism. But you're not going to be able to build that personal relationship with someone unless you have the ability to take that off and build that relationship with that person. So definitely remember, like you said, don't take yourself too seriously. One of the reasons that I started this project is because every person I've ever met has something that I don't. So whether they're 18 or 84, they probably have an experience that I don't, that I want to learn from. And I want to share that with the world. And that's kind of why we ended up on this. So, John, I appreciate you coming in today. And, we talked before we pushed the record button that neither of us really like to sit in front of the camera. But I really appreciate you sharing your story with us and sharing your experience, giving something that somebody out there can relate to so that they can, go into tomorrow better prepared. Any parting words?
Absolutely. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, remember, everyone, thanks for coming along to the LUYL podcast show, whatever this is. And remember to level up your life today. Thank you very much.